Today at the National Press Club, federal Liberal leader Sussan Ley, the first opposition leader to address the club in 3 years. Sussan Ley is putting her stamp on the position, outlining her party's priorities as it rebuilds from its crushing election defeat. Sussan Ley with today's Press Club address.
Hello and welcome to the National Press Club of Australia for today's Westpac address. My name is Tom Connell, I'm the club's president and an anchor as well, a politics anchor at Sky News. Today's guest, of course, is the opposition leader, Sussan Ley. Sussan Ley brings some firsts to the Liberal Party, most notably the first woman to lead the party in its more than 80 years of history. Now, my brief research revealed she's not the first trained pilot to lead the party, that honour going to John Gorton, who flew missions for RAAF in the Second World War. I haven't done a deep dive on this next factoid, but I believe she's the first Liberal leader to go through a self-described punk rock phase. And I was thinking how that might apply to modern day politics. I thought of a Dead Kennedys song, so bear with me on this. It's called Soup is Good Food. The lyrics go, we're sorry, but you're no longer needed or wanted or even cared about here. Machines can do a better job than you, and this is what you get for asking questions. Now, it was written in 1985, but sounds a lot like the warnings about AI taking our jobs. So anyway, there's just one possibility for you there on the policy front. Her first job, of course, is uniting her party and providing a genuine opposition to a Labor government riding high with its biggest ever majority. For those of you watching at home, you can join the conversation on X, where our handle is PressClubost. You can use the hashtag NPC as well. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sussan Ley.
Thank you for the warm welcome, and I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. I would also like to acknowledge my many colleagues in the room. We have enormous talent in our shadow cabinet, the wider shadow ministry, and in both coalition party rooms. Today will be my first address as federal leader of the Liberal Party to the National Press Club, and it will not be my last. With many freedoms under assault around the world, I appreciate and understand the important role that our media plays in protecting the robust democracy that we have in Australia. Sometimes we will agree, sometimes we will disagree, but as long as you hold both the government and the opposition to account, then our democracy and our freedoms will be well served. About a kilometre down the road is a red brick high school called Campbell High. If you ventured there nearly 5 decades back, you'd find a shy young student with a British accent, Susan Braybrooks. If you had told that girl then that she would be standing here now, she wouldn't have believed you. No one told her she could rise to a position of political leadership. Like many Australians, she never considered running for public office. She did have dreams, but they involved steering planes, not steering the government. It's the beginning of my story, a very Australian story, and today, amongst other important matters, I want to share some of that story with you. It's a story of both opportunity and failure, of joy and heartbreak. It's a journey that has shaped who I am today and the type of leader I will be. It's an enormous source of pride that in this country, any Australian from any walk of life can make a contribution to our national story. A country where a young migrant at Campbell High can seize the endless opportunities made available in Australia to serve in the federal parliament, to sit in the federal cabinet and become leader of the federal Liberal Party. In recent weeks, a lot has been made of the fact that I'm the first woman elected to lead the Liberal Party and the first woman leader of the opposition. Whilst this sends a strong signal that we are taking a fresh approach and doing things differently, I'm not here to speak about milestones or firsts. I'm here to talk about the important work we are going to do over the next 3 years to rebuild trust with Australians, so we're worthy of their support at the next election. Aspiration is the thread that connects every single part of Australian society. Aspiration is the foundation of the Australian promise that if you work hard, play by the rules, do your best for your kids and contribute to your community, you will be able to build a better life for yourself and your family. That promise feels rather distant for many Australians today. Cost of living is rising, wages are stagnant, and home ownership is out of reach. Australians work hard, but too often they feel like they're running harder just to stand still. For too many Australians, it's a promise that seems almost unachievable. The Liberal Party must restore that promise to empower Australians to make decisions that are right for them, to reward effort, not punish success, to ensure that government backs its citizens, not burdens them. That is the Australia I believe in. My focus will always be on helping those aspirational Australians as we seek to regain trust with voters across our great country. The task before me and my team is to lead a Liberal Party that respects modern Australia, reflects modern Australia, and represents modern Australia. My journey here is not one of privilege. It's a story of work, struggle, persistence, and belief in the country that gave me and my family a chance. I was born in Nigeria to British parents. They lived busy lives. The first lesson they instilled in me growing up was that your job was about more than just clocking on and clocking off. It was about having a vocation, something that made the world a better place or made a difference in society. My dad worked in military intelligence and his mission was peace and security. I would jump in the Land Rover with him after school as he sped between caves in the hills and backstreet dives, speaking loudly in Arabic to his contacts. Even as a child, I instinctively sensed how important this work was. My mum found her true calling as a mental health nurse, helping people and minds to heal. Looking back, I'm amazed that she was able to have that full-time job with a long commute and was still home each evening to sort the house out. It was a different time with different expectations, but somehow she always managed to be there for the people she cared for in her family and in her work. Between graduating from school and becoming, as I described myself, a farmer's wife, I worked my share of the tough jobs: cleaner, waitress, short order cook, rouseabout, and outback pilot. I was not taken seriously in pilot training. I was nearly always the only woman in the group. The privileged boys whose parents bankrolled their lessons attracted more street cred than me. I lived in a bedsit under the bridge in Queanbeyan, and my clothes were from Vinnie's because every dollar I made went towards flying lessons. One male instructor said, "Why are you doing this? You're no good at it." I wasn't to begin with, but that's not the point. I was told I couldn't get a crop dusting rating because the chemicals would damage my unborn children. I was yelled at, hit on, and then ignored. In my early 20s, I was working in air traffic control at Sydney Airport. I wanted to pursue something different. I wanted to actually fly. I advertised my recently acquired skills as an aerial mustering pilot in rural newspapers across the country. I had 3 phone calls. A wealthy grazier said, "Can you cook? What sort of plane do you want?" A machinery dealer asked if I was single and mentioned vague extracurricular activities. And then finally, I got the call. A gruff voice barked down the phone, "How quickly can you get to Thargomindah?" "I'll be there in 48 hours, I said. I packed up my flat in Coogee and drove 1,700 k's in my much-loved 1969 HT Holden to the backcountry. As I turned west at Cunnamulla for the 250-kilometre stretch to Thargo, it hit me. Working 3 jobs, earning my pilot's licence and staying true to my dream had brought me here. And I was so bloody grateful for the gift of opportunity in this incredible country. I arrived at my employer's door at 6 p.m. on a Sunday. He later told me he looked at this young girl and thought, even if you can't actually fly a plane, you'll never last. Weeks later, as he dozed in the passenger seat of the plane, I woke him up to say the lights at the airport wouldn't come on. We didn't have enough fuel to go elsewhere, so we'd be landing in the dark. As I lined up for what I hoped was the threshold of runway 13 at Thargomindah Airport, I observed that there is nothing as black as an outback night. He didn't see the funny side. But as we landed safely and got out of the plane, he looked over at the anxious welcoming party and said, the girl's got guts. She sure can fly. Where the airline bosses didn't want me in the left-hand seat of a corporate jet, the boys in the blue singlets jumped into the back of my Bush aircraft without hesitation. They trusted me, and I trusted them. I soon found myself working in the shearing sheds, picking up 800 fleeces a day, cooking for a team of 20 on wood stoves in high summer, with kerosene fridges and pit toilets. I learnt the value of a hard day's manual labour, often in the scorching heat of Western Queensland. This experience is one I'm proud of, but it would be unremarkable to the many Australians who get out of bed early, roll up their sleeves and work the long hours. Later, while I raised 3 children, I studied, worked and built a new career. It was far from easy. I remember earth-moving equipment coming in to dig a large hole to dispose of our sheep. The government's economic mismanagement meant there was no market for them. My job was to move the sheep up the race to be shot. It was a very difficult time for me and my family. Between high interest rates, the wool floor price collapse, and all the other challenges of running a business with too many expenses and too little cash flow, we struggled. Those days will never leave me, and the lasting connections made are why I understand just how tough it can be for those who live a life on the land. Balancing the family budget was becoming too hard, so I made a decision that many mums have made before and since: get new skills and bring in extra income. So, as I raised my own family, I went to university for the first time, aged 30. I still remember the day I walked in to enrol in a Bachelor of Economics at La Trobe University in Wodonga. I kept thinking, can I really do this? I got out of the battered farm ute, baby in a capsule, and I felt so out of place. I was a different generation from these students who didn't seem to have a care in the world. I felt like an outsider. I remember being suffocated by self-doubt. There I stood, the mature age student with a crying baby, convinced that I did not belong here. I mumbled something about this not being right for me, and I went to leave. That's when Dr. Julie Jackson popped out of a lecture theatre, took one look at me, picked up the baby capsule and said, "You look like you need help with that. Come on in." Her simple human act gave me the confidence to stay the course. That path led me to where I am today. It's a story of women supporting women, yes, but it's also a story of the barriers that stand in front of parents with young kids. Because if I didn't have that car or that baby capsule, I might never have enrolled in the first place. Thanks to that support, over the next 10 years, I obtained a Bachelor of Economics, a Master of Taxation Law and a Master of Accounting. These were not just academic pursuits. They were part of my commitment to understanding how our economy functions and how we can better manage public money. Before entering Parliament, I worked at the Australian Tax Office. That role gave me a first-hand understanding of how our tax system works and how often how it doesn't. It reinforced my view that economic management must be responsible, practical, and always focused on delivering value for the taxpayer. It also reinforced something I learnt as the child of an intelligence officer: a deep and abiding respect for the public service. That is part of my story too. Whether it was my time working in an office, on the land or in the air, I have lived the reality that many Australians live every day. I have juggled work, caring and parenting, worried about not being able to pay the bills, relied on neighbours, been unsure of what the next year might bring. And that matters. Because it's from that life experience that I understand what government can do and what it can't do. I've always believed that the best governments create opportunity, not dependency. The best governments have a belief in people, more than just programs. The best governments don't try to run every person's life, rather they focus on getting the fundamentals right so that every person can achieve their best. As leader of the Federal Liberal Party, I will always be honest and upfront with the Australian people. So let's be honest and upfront about last month's election. We didn't just lose, we got smashed. Totally smashed. What we as the Liberal Party presented to the Australian people was comprehensively rejected. The scale of that defeat, its size and significance is not lost on me nor any one of my parliamentary team sitting here today. It was devastating for our parliamentary colleagues, our party members, our supporters and voters across the country. I want to thank all coalition candidates who ran at the election. I want to particularly acknowledge my many friends who served in the Parliament with distinction who have not returned this term. Over 2 elections, the Coalition has lost 33 seats in the House of Representatives. We've lost 8 seats in the Senate. Our primary vote has fallen by more than 9% in the House. Our 2-party preferred vote is down more than 6%. And we hold now just 2 of 43 inner metro seats and 7 of 45 outer metro seats. These numbers reflect a deep and growing disconnect. We respect the election outcome with humility. We accept it with contrition. And we must learn from it with conviction. I have never taken representing the people of Farrer for granted. It's been the greatest professional privilege of my life. In the last 2 terms of Parliament, I've delivered $1 billion in funding to the electorate. But I acknowledge that last month, like colleagues around the rest of the country, I received a message in Farrer too. And to them, I want to say this: I've never been more determined to serve you than I am today. The people of Farrer are not an afterthought in my leadership. They are the foundation of my leadership. One of my great mentors, former Prime Minister John Howard, often said about elections that the Australian people always get it right. I agree with him. The Australian people need a strong and effective alternative to vote for at the next election. Our first step is to listen so we properly understand how we can improve. Last week, we appointed Prue Goward and Nick Minchin to conduct a root and branch review of the election result. Both are eminent Australians, widely respected for their distinguished service across a broad spectrum of public life. Never has a review been so important to the Federal Liberal Party. Prue brings a deep expertise from her extensive work in government, human rights, social policy and the media. Nick has had a long and successful career in government, politics, campaigns, diplomacy and finance. Their review will be frank and fearless, ensuring a thorough and honest assessment of what went wrong and how we can fix it. It will look at the election campaign and also the period leading up to it. It will look at the performance of the Liberal Party, the Federal Secretariat, the State and Territory divisions and the parliamentary team. As a federal executive, we've tasked the review with looking at the Liberal Party's performance across the country and among all voter groups and communities, including multicultural communities, women and youth, and urban and regional areas. They'll also look at the way we conduct our research, our policy development, and how we communicate to Australians. The review will conclude by the end of the year, and it will be made public. We can do better, and we will do better. Can I say to those Australians who voted for us, thank you. To those who did not, we hear you, and we recognise that we did not meet your expectations. We will do the hard work to regain your trust and earn your support in 3 years' time. But as important as the election review is, it's clear that the issues confronting our great Liberal movement go deeper. That's why our federal executive will soon discuss a more broad-ranging and wider review process of the fundamentals of the Liberal Party. I believe there is a need for the party as a whole to have a deeper look at the existential issues we face, how our divisional constitutions operate, and how we can better serve, support, most importantly, grow our membership. This will not be an academic exercise. My parliamentary team and I will stay in close touch with our state and territory divisions to ensure success in this important area. Senator James McGrath will play an integral role in bringing this longer-term body of work together. It will be a crucial part of our efforts to better respect, reflect and represent modern Australia. In times of crisis, there's always talk of returning to our foundations, often in the context of Sir Robert Menzies. The party Menzies founded was not only for women, it was built by them. It was women's groups, women's voices and women's energy that helped shape the Liberal Party. The Australian Women's National League, as well as many other prominent women's organisations, were central to the formation of our party. We must be a Liberal Party that is proudly for women and made up of women. Our party must pre-select more women in winnable seats so that we see more Liberal women in federal parliament. Now, I'm agnostic on specific methods to make it happen, but I am a zealot that it actually does happen. Current approaches have clearly not worked, so I'm open to any approach that will. The Liberal Party operates as a federated model, meaning that each state division determines its own pre-selection rules. If some state divisions choose to implement quotas, that's fine. If others don't, that's also fine. But what is not fine is not having enough women. As the first woman leader of our federal party, let me send the clearest possible message. We need to do better, recruit better, retain better and support better. That's why I will work with every division, as will my parliamentary team, to ensure we pre-select more women for the 2028 election. When I say the Liberal Party must respect, reflect and represent modern Australia, people have understandably asked, well, what do we mean by that? Modern Australia is diverse, dynamic and ambitious. It's made up of people from every corner of the world. It's families raising children in the suburbs. It's young people building careers, renting while chasing the home ownership dream and studying for futures that look very different from the past. It's older Australians who helped build this country who still have so much wisdom to offer with a strong stake in our nation's future. It's professionals, small business owners, community volunteers, entrepreneurs and everyday workers who deserve to be recognised, not overlooked. Modern Australia is not just one story, it's all of them. And our party must be big enough to represent that shared experience. One of the clearest messages from the election was that Australians want better answers from us. We are the alternative government and we must act like it. The Liberal Party is at its best when we focus on building aspiration in our country, that thread which connects every part of Australian society. We are at our best when we focus on making government better, not bigger. When we argue for lower taxes, not higher. And when we talk about policies to create more opportunity instead of just criticising Labor for creating less. I do not take the responsibility of being leader of the opposition lightly. My leadership will be inclusive, consultative and collaborative. Over the next 2 days, we will meet as a shadow ministry, as a shadow cabinet and as a Liberal Party room. The party room meeting will not be about debating or determining individual policies. It will be our first formal opportunity to discuss the 2025 election and the Goward-Minchin review. It will also be an administrative party meeting focused on discussing structures and frameworks for new policy development processes. This will be an initial meeting on these matters and further work will follow. I want to empower all MPs and senators in my party room, from the leadership group to the backbench, to contribute to the development of our party's next policy platform. As I have often said, our policies are up for review, but our values are not. Our policy development process will be iterative and continuous. It will evolve throughout the term in response to internal and external feedback, emerging issues and ongoing engagement with the community. As part of that policy development process, we will establish a dedicated coalition working group on energy and emissions reduction policy. This group will work directly to me and to David Littleproud. It will be led by the Shadow Minister, Dan Tehan, and involve the Shadow Treasurer, Ted O'Brien, Susan McDonald in Resources, Alex Hawke in Industry, Angie Bell in Environment, and Shadow Assistant Ministers, Dean Smith and Andrew Wilcox. And over the course of this term, our task will be to develop a plan underpinned by 2 goals: having a stable energy grid which provides affordable and reliable power for Australian households and businesses, and reducing emissions so that we are playing our part in the global effort. Every single member of both coalition party rooms will have the opportunity to engage with and be part of this work. Our approach must be practical and principled as we address these 2 goals. In the last term of Parliament, as the Shadow Minister for Small Business and Industry, I couldn't walk into a small business or onto a factory floor without hearing about a crippling power price increase taking them to the brink. Now, the government has made a lot of promises on both energy and on emissions reduction. They were just elected with a very substantial majority. It's now on them to explain how they will realise the targets they have committed to and the promises they have made on both. We will hold them to account on these issues at every turn, because families and businesses around the country are depending on their governments to get energy policy right. Our aim is to ensure the Liberal Party's future policy offering connects with voters across the country. Our party must look and sound and feel like the country it seeks to represent. That starts with strong economic management. A tax system that restores the Liberal Party fairly and squarely as the party of lower taxes. A society which supports strong families and communities. An economy that provides dignity and security to ageing Australians. Housing that is attainable, especially for young people. Communities where everyone, especially women, feel more than safe but empowered. A country that works alongside Indigenous Australians in dignity, opportunity and mutual respect. And a health system that helps prevent illness as well as treat it. We're going to listen, stand by our values, fix our policies and work hard every single day for the Australian people. We will be constructive when the government has good ideas and critical when they have bad ones. But we will always act through the prism of the national interest. That is what Australian people deserve, and that is what they will get under my leadership. I'm clear-eyed about the task before me and my team. My leadership will not be measured by headlines or the polling of the day. It will be judged by the Australian people on whether, at the next federal election, the Liberal Party presents a serious, credible and compelling agenda for change. An agenda that meets modern Australia where they are and restores trust in our ability to govern. A policy offering that tackles the economic, technological and social challenges Australia now faces. That addresses the big questions. how to grow the economy, lift productivity, build more homes for younger Australians, tackle cost of living, help people keep more of what they earn, and restore confidence in our institutions. So, judge me on whether Australians in every corner of the country can see a future in the Liberal Party. Whether a young woman in her first job, a couple starting a family, a small business owner putting everything on the line, or a migrant family working hard to get ahead can all say at the next election, that's a party that's here for me and the things I believe in. That's how I will measure success. Now is also a time for clear eyes and honest conversations on national security and defence. As the government's own Defence Strategic Review makes clear, this will be a decade defined by global uncertainty and strategic competition. The public version of that document says this, and I quote, "Strategic warning time for conventional conflict is a time a country estimates an adversary would need to launch a major attack against it. In the post-Second World War period, Australia was protected by its geography and the limited ability of other nations in the region to project power. In the contemporary strategic era, we cannot rely on geography or warning time." End quote. This means, according to the Prime Minister's own expert advice, Australia must be ready for the prospect of conflict. The Defence Strategic Review called for, quote, "an urgent call to action, including higher levels of military preparedness and accelerated capability." So I ask, are we as prepared as we need to be? And are we seeing straight talk from this government? Earlier this year, all Australians saw the reports of the Chinese Communist Party's Navy ships circumnavigating Australia. We see China as an important partner and seek respectful engagement with the Chinese government and its people. But that respect must go both ways. The way this circumnavigation occurred was not respectful. We called it out at the time, and we would do so again. I want Australia and China to have a good relationship. When it comes to our two great countries, there is much to be optimistic about. I was part of the Abbott government cabinet that signed the China-Australia Free Trade Agreement. Our two nations have a shared history which is rich with incredible people-to-people links. It is those connections which should define this relationship. But we have to be clear-eyed about our region and the world we live in too. The Defence Strategic Review was delivered more than 2 years ago, and global instability has only worsened since then. Look at how much further it has deteriorated, even since last month's election. Look at how much it has changed in the past week alone. Last night, I was briefed by national security officials on the unfolding situation in the Middle East. And I want to thank the ADF personnel and public servants who have been working tirelessly to support Australians to leave the Middle East. These developments underscore the need for Australia to step up our commitment to defence. Across the world, autocratic countries are spending more on military capabilities. Many of our trusted allies are responding by matching urgent rhetoric with urgent action. I do not believe the Prime Minister has levelled with the Australian people. Anthony Albanese's response has been anything but urgent. He refuses to match the coalition's ambition for defence spending to reach 3% of GDP and the capability that would support. Australia must meet this moment of uncertainty with confidence, strength and honesty. On my watch, the Liberal Party will have the honest conversations we need to, not to frighten or scare, but to level with Australians about the choices that must be made. We also need to defend the rules-based order which has underpinned our prosperity. As the world writes the rules of technologies like artificial intelligence and the new norms of space, it is in Australia's interest that countries with a commitment to human rights and liberal values be the ones holding the pen. That is why now is the time for Australia to step up, not step back. We have to build on alliances like AUKUS, the Quad, and our Five Eyes partnership. The first step must be an increase in defence spending, with a focus on key capabilities, including space, drones and missiles. And we need a proper strategy to address the declining recruitment numbers in the ADF. All Australians deserve a chance to live the Australian dream, whether they were born here or migrated here as I did. Migrants and our newest citizens deserve the full protection and full opportunity of a life in Australia, and the Coalition will always put in place the resources to give them that security. There are some national challenges where governments haven't done enough, and where as Australians we need to step in and step up. And leadership means facing uncomfortable truths with honesty, strength and purpose. As Liberals, we will always stand up for women and children. The Liberal Party I lead will work constructively on our country's greatest national shame, family and domestic violence. 1 in 2 women has experienced sexual harassment in their lifetime. From the age of 15, 1 in 3 women has experienced violence and 1 in 6 have experienced physical or sexual abuse. Last term, I stood in the Parliament and I read out the names of women who had lost their lives in just 1 year. These women are not just statistics. They are mothers, daughters, friends. They had hopes and dreams that they will never now realise. I want the women of Australia to hear me when I say to them as a national leader, I understand the fear you feel when you go for a walk alone, because I have felt that fear too. I understand the pain that comes with coercion and control, because I have felt that pain too. I understand what it's like when you blame yourself for the actions of others, because I have blamed myself too. I will take this perspective to every decision I make. I will never let domestic and family violence fall down the list of priorities. We need new approaches, stronger partnerships, greater resources, and absolute resolve. We need men's groups to step up, because men's health policy is women's safety policy. The scale of loss Australia is seeing from domestic and family violence is unacceptable. Another area that demands stronger government intervention is the protection of our children from devices and technology. The rise of digital technology and social media has changed the world and unlocked so much potential. But in opening those doors, strangers have unfortunately been let into the lives of our children. We have allowed some of the smartest people in the world to make billions of dollars by peddling addictive technology to children, and it is shortening their childhoods. Parents need government in their corner to help fight this fight. We're seeing AI technology commoditise our kids and deep fakes ruin the lives of women. Prime Minister, when it comes to standing up for women and children, I am ready to work with you. I invite you to accept my invitation in good faith. Now, as important as the Press Club is, and it is, rebuilding the Liberal Party will not happen in here. It will happen in communities across Australia. We have to reconnect with nurses and teachers, with tradies and shopkeepers, with young professionals, with multicultural communities, with renters and people with mortgages. I want Australia to once again be a country where girls like Susan Braybrooks can dream their biggest dreams and achieve them. A country where effort is rewarded and families are supported, where government is there to help, not get in the way. Because today, many people don't see Australia as that country. Our job is to offer a new agenda that builds aspiration and rewards aspiration. If we do that, we can once again be that country. Under my leadership, we will respect modern Australia, reflect modern Australia, and represent modern Australia. Thank you.
Ley. Thank you. Just going to jump in there. The applause might go on forever otherwise. It sounds to me as though the previous spoken about outer suburban strategy of the Liberal Party is gone. You want to go broader than that. Curious as to how much time and effort you would still put into existing so-called teal hell seats, because you've now got members with sort of 2+ terms in them. They're expensive headline-grabbing contests. Do you need to be strategic about whether or not you try to win those seats specifically?
The road to government for us goes through every single teal seat. I want to give a shout out to Tim Wilson from the electorate of Goldstein, who won back a teal seat. It's worth a round of applause. And I want to say this, I respect everyone who's been elected to the federal parliament, including those who now represent those so-called teal seats. But the communities in those seats have every right to have expectations on their members that we all have on ourselves, which is that we will deliver change, representation and strong results for them. Now, they have to demonstrate that. That's a big job, because if you look at the size of the majority in the House and the fact that we are the official opposition, the question is, what is the role for the crossbench? This is going to be a parliament where the influence of the crossbench is, I think, at almost its lowest ebb. So I know that the voters in those teal seats that we are determined to reconnect with will hold their members to account, and I know that we will have an agenda that delivers for them in the next 3 years.
First question from the floor, Michelle Grattan from The Conversation.
Ms Ley, one of the Liberal Party's worst problems at the moment is its feral factionalism. Now, obviously, the review that you have underway will go to this, will talk about ways to combat it. But here and now, can you tell us how destructive you think this factionalism is, especially in your state organisations, and what you intend to do about it?
I think there was once a Prime Minister who stood in front of the New South Wales division of the party and said there weren't factions. And that didn't necessarily go down well. Look, what I want to say, by the way, to the people who are watching this and see this as an inside question, and I'm not disrespecting the question, Michelle, it's an important question, is that we're all here every day to work hard for the Australian people. And anything that detracts from that will get no truck with me. Now, in all of our Liberal Party divisions and ranks across Australia, the issue of factions has come to the fore. I was quite public about what I called a branch stack in my own seat of Farrer before the 2022 election. So things were not well in the division. I supported the intervention that my predecessor put in place. Good work was done by that panel. We've now got a new committee that is taking that work forward with a new constitution, rules, and those rules are designed to address the issues that people raise from time to time about the influence on Liberal Party branch memberships and individuals that has nothing to do with our core business, which is winning elections and fighting the fight against Labor for the Australian people. So having got that new set of arrangements in place in New South Wales, we are well placed to be the party we need to be to take the fight up to Labor.
Next question, Jane Norman from the ABC.
Hello, Opposition Leader. Thanks for your address today, and we welcome you back to the club as Opposition Leader. My question sort of goes to what Michelle was asking about the issue of the state branches, and you, of course, have extended the intervention in New South Wales. But what about Victoria? You have a state that was once the jewel in the crown of the Liberal Party that's now dysfunctional, in the grip of a civil war that seemingly has no end. How do you fix the Victorian branch, and is it time for a federal takeover of that division too?
In your question and even Michelle's question point to something that I mentioned in my speech, which will be part of the way going forward, and that is the broader long-term review. Obviously, our shorter-term review will look at the campaign itself, but I just want to remind people that that longer-term review, where James McGrath will lead a lot of the work, we'll talk to divisions. We'll talk to those who have an interest in improving the works of their divisions and can identify issues in the past. And it is about how does the Liberal Party deliver the best value proposition, if I can call it that, to the membership that we want to join? How can this be a party that people say, that's my tribe, I want to belong to the Liberal Party? And are there structures and arrangements within the parties and the divisions that prevent that. So that is a really important piece of work, and I look forward to what it will tell us, and it will answer some of these questions. In principle, interventions are not something we should support from a federal level, but we do support our state divisions to get it right.
Phil Curry from the AFR.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, Ms Ley. Welcome to the Press Club. You've outlined sort of a fairly formidable recovery plan, comprehensive, but at the end of the day, the mathematics is you're sitting on 43 seats that would need to win more than 30 to win the next election. Could I ask you, in your bones, what is your most realistic expectation or benchmark for success at the next election? And I don't mean to pry, but you also alluded towards the end of your speech that you'd had first-hand experience with domestic violence. Is that correct? Is that something you've spoken about before?
Look, many women in our communities and in the rooms that we walk in have told me their personal stories, and I've identified with them. With respect to the party I lead, the most important focus I have every day is working for everyday Australians. Now, critically, we have to present a serious, credible, important agenda that is authentic and that people relate to going forward. So every single day, my incredibly talented parliamentary team, and I'm harnessing all of their talents, will work to do exactly that, so that we can meet modern Australia where they are and answer some of the criticisms which I suspect are the reasons why we didn't do so well. The review will tell us more, but we didn't have a message that resonated. We didn't present policies that people identified with as being relevant in their lives. We didn't talk well to young professionals, to young people, to women whose support I've lost. So in working hard to regain and rebuild that support, the steps that we will take, I know, will deliver and help create that value proposition. So I sometimes talk about 3 years' time, but each and every day we're working hard with that objective in mind, and I know we can do well, and I'm optimistic about what we can do.
Given how high the bar is, though, is it fair to say you could have a successful election without winning it outright?
Look, these are things commentators talk about, Tom. You know, what will the numbers be? What will the polls say? What's the measure of success?
Great quote for all the pieces this week.
But I answer to the people who expect what they should of an opposition. So if you didn't vote for the Liberal Party, you still want us to be a strong opposition. You still want the best possible opposition to deliver the best possible government. And doing that means we do need to present that alternative agenda. We do need to be serious and credible. We do need to work on our policy, as I've outlined today. That policy development wasn't done well in the last term. Some people have been very open about that, and I know our review will find deficiencies in that process. So all of these things matter, and all of these things are part of those next steps. So in holding the government to account, which I want to do and we will do every single day, we're also conscious that we want to build that alternative agenda as well.
Anthony Galloway from Capital Brief.
Thank you for your speech, Ms Ley. Just on policy development not being up to scratch, a few weeks ago I reported that in the lead up to the election, Angus Taylor submitted a policy whereby if inflation fell beyond the 2 to 3% target range, fell above 3%, that Australians would get an automatic tax rebate, essentially guaranteeing that if the government mismanaged inflation, it was up to them to give that bracket creep to pick up the bill. Did you ever see that policy? Because my understanding is it never went to shadow cabinet or shadow ERC, but did you see that policy? And how, under your leadership, would a policy like that actually see the light of day where shadow cabinet or shadow ERC gets to debate something like that?
I'm not going to reflect on that particular example or what I may have seen or not seen. I do note that parliamentarians are all part of the review process going forward. So there will be a transparent, honest look at what happened, what should have happened, could have happened, didn't happen. And that will answer that question. But going forward, I'm very serious about how we do policy development, how we do costings, and how we make sure that we start that work from day one. And the exciting opportunity here is for the parliamentary team. For me, it's the parliamentary team whether you're in the shadow ministry or the backbench, has terrific ideas, great initiatives, is in touch with every Australian with a range of lived experiences across this country. And bringing all of that into a policy development process, the one I've described, we're going to start talking about this week, is really exciting because it means we will get really strong, good policies that will be a result of consultation between ourselves, but most importantly, consultation with the community. I'm very happy to be measured and judged by the processes that I put in place to get the strongest possible policy development for our team, for the Australian people.
Mark Riley from the 7 Network.
Excuse me. Hi, Ms Ley. Thanks very much for your address. The opposition in the last term was characterised by being quite muscular in its opposition, even to cost of living relief in the Parliament, and at times seemed like just reflexively said no and then found a justification for doing it later. I'm wondering if you accept that now as a mistake and whether you might take a more constructive approach in the Parliament, but taking into consideration that it'll be harder for you to block anything in the Parliament because of the paucity of your numbers.
We will be constructive where there is something to be constructive about, because if you see what the Parliament deals with and what the Labor Party brings forward through the prism of the national interest of Australians, and we will always see that through the prism of our own values, then the question is not a difficult one. If there is a place to be constructive, then we will. If there's something that comes before the Parliament that's deserving of criticism, we won't hesitate. But I want to give an example, and that is the NDIS. In the last Parliament, we said to the government, we will be constructive on the NDIS. I say that again to the Prime Minister. This needs to be sorted out in this term of government. It's incumbent on the government to sort this out. We stand ready to support them. I've said today I stand ready to support the Prime Minister on initiatives around family and domestic violence and technologies with children. So I've demonstrated already that my approach is there are times when we do need to be constructive, and you will see that from me.
Next question, Charles Croucher from the 9 Network.
Hello, Ms Ley. Thank you for your address. Previous leaders and prime ministers have had groups of voters, people like Howard's Battlers, Scott Morrison's Quiet Australians, Julia Gillard's Working Families. They weren't just groups of voters, they were mission statements about policy and priority and where they would move forward. So, is it the suburbs of Sussan Ley's Labourers? What's your group of voter and what's your mission statement that goes with it?
Well, I leave it to the fine scribes in the press gallery to come up with the appropriate alliteration at the appropriate time. But, you know, I think I know what you're saying, Charles. I just want to tell you what I think of when we talk about groups of Australians. I think of Australians who no one hears from, no one sees, and who have more courage getting up in the morning and leading their lives than anyone in this room will ever have. I think of the Australians who walk through the doors of, my colleagues will know, our electorate offices, because we're often a place of last resort. And they might be someone with a disabled child who's worried sick that they're not getting the treatment they need, or that they themselves are going to die and what will happen to their child with no one to care for them. They haven't slept, it feels, for their whole lives because their caring responsibilities are such a drain. I talk to women who have lost everything because of a bad relationship breakup and don't want to admit to me that, you know, they're living in their car or they're just trying to find the next friend to sort of crash and stay with for a week. I've seen children in school uniforms, perfectly dressed, getting out of cars to go to school. That's not Australia today. What are we doing? So I want to fight for those people. I want to fight for them, give them a voice, and I want them to know that the experience I've had in my life and the lived experience of the people in my party room absolutely understand them and are there for them 100%.
Anna Henderson from SBS.
Thank you. You talk about quotas in your speech, and I just wanted to ask, you say quotas are fine, but you're not attempting to sort of mandate them. So is there another option that you are considering here in somewhere like Queensland, which has such a few female representatives at the moment, where you would consider federal intervention or captain's picks? And just separately, very briefly, are you intending to go to the Gama Festival this year?
With respect to quotas and people say the word quotas, what I think to myself is, come on, it's time to get serious about women in the Liberal Party. You can describe it how you want in terms of mandatory, voluntary, state divisions, whatever. I want to work proactively, passionately with our state divisions to achieve more women in the Liberal Party. What we have now is completely unacceptable. What we have done has not worked. What we need to do going forward has to be different. So every state division owns, you know, what happens within that division. That's the autonomy of our federated model. And I want to work with everyone who lives in any position in that model to produce the result. But can I say, I'm delighted that the number of party members, women's organisations associated with our party, women who hold strong positions of leadership in our party around the country, including in the division you just mentioned, have all approached me and said, we stand ready to make this happen. So I'm enthusiastic, I'm optimistic, it is going to happen. With respect to Garma, I believe that's in August and I'm yet to determine my diary movements.
Do you see it as a priority?
I see supporting Indigenous Australians as a priority, and I want to give a shout out to Karen Little, a proud Indigenous woman who has the portfolio of Indigenous Affairs and Social Services. Karen is a Senator for South Australia, and I'll be in close touch with her and all of my colleagues on how we can best support the aspirations of Indigenous Australians.
So is the message, if you don't get that increase of women getting into Parliament or, you know, pre-selections, that you would then intervene?
I'm not prepared to accept that we won't, Tom. I mean, this is incredibly important.
But so many people in your position have said that before, and the numbers haven't gone up.
I'm the first woman in my position, and I don't believe anyone in my position has had the resolve that I have right here, right now. Watch this space.
Okay. Ruben Spargo from Sky News.
Ms. Ley, thank you. You served in Malcolm Turnbull's cabinet. Since he left Parliament, he's been a vocal commentator and frequent critic on your Liberal leader predecessor's policies and performance. Is he someone that you'd talk to or advice you'd court?
I always leave the comments that others make in our party organisation or previous Prime Ministers to be evaluated accordingly by anyone. I'm in touch with previous Prime Ministers. I actually exchanged texts with Malcolm while he was overseas. I've sat down with John Howard, with Tony Abbott, with previous premiers, and you know, I'm always interested in their instructions, their advice. Instructions being a little bit cheeky because they are certainly very willing to share their experience. But that's a good thing. I should add Scott Morrison to the list. I served in Scott Morrison's cabinet during COVID. I was proud to do so during a critical time with the pandemic in this country.
Greg Brown from The Australian.
Hi, Ms. Ley. Just on budget sustainability, neither side went to the last election with a plan to put the budget back in black, and you've already recommitted to increasing defence spending considerably. So with the government now undertaking this review of tax, do you think there's a case for increasing taxation in some areas? And Jim Chalmers has not ruled out reviewing the GST if there are suggestions to increase it. Is this something you'd be willing to consider as well?
We will always be the party of lower, simpler, fairer taxes. And I said in my speech, I want to restore our reputation as being the party of lower taxes. That's the first and most important thing to state. You also mentioned the government's review, productivity, and all of the things they're talking about at the moment, which we stand ready to support, but I'm not sure it's going to achieve what it needs to. Every time I hear Jim Chalmers talk about productivity, I think that it took him 3 years to even mention productivity. I sat through budget speeches where the word productivity wasn't mentioned, and now he's talking about reviews of taxation, which sounds to me like how to find more ways to tax Australians higher, because he doesn't talk about the other side of the balance sheet, which is spending, which is government spending. The government is completely silent on that. So I don't think this government can address the productivity challenges that are in front of them, which is productivity is flatlining, growth is flatlining. Australia's living standards are going backwards. Increasingly, we are not a country where the rest of the world wants to invest. These are massive challenges for Australians. But in terms of things that we may or may not do, that's subject to our review process and our policy development process.
But could there be a case for raising taxation in the GST, for example, if it means that you're lowering income tax and actually lowering the tax burden overall?
As soon as you say, is there a case for raising tax, my instinctive answer is no. In terms of the detail, we'll see how we examine the proposals that the government brings forward. I mean, they haven't got a proposal around GST. But most importantly, right here, right now, in opposition, we have to hold them to account. We have to hold a mirror up to what they are doing, because they're telling the Australian people they've got answers. They clearly don't.
Olivia Ireland from the SMH and the Age.
Thank you, Ms Ley, for your speech. Previous Liberal Party reviews, particularly the 2022 review published by Jane Hume and Brian Longman, explicitly stated a reason for the decline in the vote is because of women. You yourself, after this review, was in the second most senior position as Deputy Opposition Leader. How can you guarantee that this review will actually be listened to?
Brian Loughnane and Jane Hume did an outstanding job on their review, and they're outstanding individuals contributing as they do to public life. This is a different era. I have a different tone, a different team, and I have different priorities. The priority that I have articulated very strongly today around women is one that I will not take a backward step from. So, without looking back and making unnecessary commentary about the past, I don't necessarily think that's helpful. To the extent that people want to understand what happened, they will through our review process. So I'm not trying to disown it or say it didn't happen. That will all come through those review processes. But what matters now is what we do next going forward. And I have made that commitment, and I'll continue to make it, and I'll continue to talk about it every single day.
Next question, Jason Koutsoukis from the Saturday paper.
Ms Ley, thanks for your speech and welcome to the Press Club. Your predecessor, Peter Dutton, declined Jim Chalmers' invitation to attend the Jobs and Skills Summit in 2022. If the same invitation is extended to you to attend the Productivity Roundtable, will you accept?
Well, as I understand it, Ted O'Brien, our Shadow Treasurer, will be there in the room, and it's important that we participate, and it's important that we hear what the government has to say. I could tell you a lot of stories about the results of the Jobs and Skills Summit because I had the skills portfolio in opposition, and it felt as if absolutely nothing happened afterwards, and the skills challenges for the Australian economy just got worse. So, but in the spirit of goodwill, I'm comfortable that we sit at that table and that we hear what the government has got to say. But they have to have honest, clear-eyed conversations with the Australian people, and I'm not sure that they're doing that right now.
So was he invited and he's accepted? Is that how?
He'll be there.
And I'm conscious he's right there, but you've got the microphone.
He is right there.
Did Labor invite Ted O'Brien, or how did that work out? Because Jim Chalmers was pretty coy on that stage when we asked him about the opposition.
Well, you probably pushed him to the invitation, and that's probably why it was issued. Well done.
There you go. We get things done here. Nicholas Smith from the Nightly.
Thank you for your speech, Opposition Leader. You mentioned a committee on energy and emissions reduction, but there has been considerable scepticism within the coalition towards net zero commitments, which puts you out of step with the public, and particularly young and metropolitan voters who want more on climate action. Are you making yourselves more unelectable for the sake of unity within the coalition?
Well, let me describe this working group, and hopefully that will give you some sense of reassurance that the working group has not landed at any point in terms of future policy. The working group is considering policy and considering it through two important foundational pillars, if you like. One is that we play our role as a country in combating the global challenge of increased emissions. The other is that we have a policy that delivers affordable, reliable and stable energy grid to provide affordable energy for households and businesses. And the working group will consider and look at what the government brings forward, at individual policy development ideas, but also consult with Australians. I don't know that we can put Australians in one homogenous group on this. There is a range of different views. I would say that the range of different views on energy policy more broadly, because that's what this is, energy policy more broadly, in our party room, reflect the range of views outside the party room. So it is important we take the time to get this right.
Next question, Dana Daniel from the Canberra Times.
Thank you for your speech, Opposition Leader. You've acknowledged the important role of the media in our democracy and mentioned social media companies making billions out of their platforms. Media companies say that the tech giants are profiting from their content without compensating them, putting the viability of public interest journalism at risk. And the PM 2 weeks ago said he remains committed to the news media bargaining incentive, but progress has been slow on this. Can you confirm that the Coalition does support this model of encouraging tech companies to pay for news through a levy with an offset that rewards those that do deals? And would you call on the government to prioritise moving towards legislating this?
We're the opposition, not the government. I know they've put measures in place from, I think, November last year to give effect to what you've described. So we'll watch it closely and make sure that it works in the national interest. But when you mention tech companies, I do want to say this. I'm not interested in the big fat balances of tech companies when they deliver content or enable the delivery of content to children that harms children. And I don't want to ever see this issue, and I know you're talking about news, so it's slightly to one side of it, but you were talking about the tech companies. I only want to see it through the prism of the effect it has on vulnerable young people who can't speak, who can't necessarily explain the effect, and who are being approached by this stuff in a way that is heinous and harmful. So I want to look straight past the tech companies into the lives of children and protect and support them.
So, for example, the ban on under 16s, if there's a result from tech companies where they just say we're turning social media off in Australia, you won't blame the Labor government for that, you'll blame the tech companies?
Well, the Labor government's got a big task to get this right. So we're not making policy from opposition, and we're there to support the government to get it right. And it's not straightforward. A lot of public policy isn't straightforward. But I do hope that they see it through the lens that I've just described.
Tom McElroy from The Guardian.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for taking our questions, Ms Ley. I was hoping to follow up on net zero. You've previously personally argued for net zero, and in your speech and in your answers today, you say Australia must play our part in the global effort. Isn't net zero the bare minimum in doing that? Shouldn't that be the starting point of any new policy from the Coalition?
It's part of energy policy as a whole. Clearly it is. Energy policy is pretty big. It includes international commitments, it includes emission reduction, it includes the types of technology that power our industry, it includes reliable, affordable, baseload power, it includes gas, it includes national security, it includes so much. So it's quite right that we consider it in one policy framework, which is exactly what this working group will do going forward. Now, we got smashed at the last election. I think I made that very clear. And that's a good reason why we would say, let's start this policy development process at the beginning, let's do it properly, and let's take the time to get it right.
So you'd be open to a non-net zero policy at the next election if that's what this committee comes back with?
I don't think you'd expect me to get ahead of a policy working group that I've just announced today.
Thank you.
Kat Wong from AAP.
Thank you so much for your address today, Ms Ley. So during your speech, you said never has a review been more important, but I wanted to point to the 1983 election, which was probably the Coalition's worst result bar the May election. One of my colleagues wrote about that election review, which showed young people, women and multicultural communities were all abandoning the Liberal Party in droves and recommended fresh thinking and better communication. So while the Coalition in subsequent decades did improve their position, 40 years later almost, you're almost in the exact same position, if not worse. If history repeats itself, the party could improve in coming years, only to fall further on. So do you think there is truly a way to stop what is emerging as a long-term pattern of regression?
You've pointed to events of 1983, which I'm not close to, but what I do know is that we did improve our position after that. And I do know that many more women came into the parliament in 1996 and made extraordinary contributions. And what I do know is that in 2001, more women in Australia voted Liberal than didn't. So we were at a good position. And I often make reference to that because we know that we don't need to be in the position we're in today and that we can get to a much stronger position. So it is important that we take the time to evaluate how, as a Liberal Party, across our organisational structure, and I think you can sense how seriously I'm taking this by this longer term review, that we do actually look at the structures of the Liberal Party and the way it meets the needs, the aspirations of its members, and how it attracts more members, and particularly how it attracts more women. So what you've just reflected to me is a great call to action.
Well, you've been very generous with your time today. We have a gift of membership as well, so that means I'm sure you'll be coming back, whether it be the bar or another address. Sussan Ley, and ladies and gentlemen, please thank Sussan Ley. Thank you. Good. Here you go.